The Pokémon world might seem the right way to refer to the place where all the events in Pokémon happen, but a better definition for it would be the Pokémon Multiverse, and that's what's gonna be taken into account in the making of this Iceberg. In this video, we'll take a look at the most obscure, bizarre, mysterious and creepy locations, as well as those places that don't make any sense, and those that were once planned but never came to be. Welcome to the iceberg of creepy and mysterious locations in the Pokémon Multiverse.
Say my name. Eisenberg. You're goddamn right.
Ultra Ruin. Ultra wormholes can be very interesting. They can lead the players to distant places in the universe. And not only that, but also to different timelines or dimensions. We know this because if you happen to end up in the Ultra Ruin where Guzzlord is devouring everything, if you pay close attention to your surroundings, you will realize that the place in question is actually a futuristic destroyed version of Hau'oli City from another dimension. Apparently, we are facing a timeline where Guzzlord or a number of them took over Alola, or probably the entire planet without anyone being able to stop them. The existence of alternative dimensions and multiple timelines is fascinating, and I think that Ultra Sun and Moon do an excellent job at this concept with Ultra Wormholes and the Rainbow Rocket episode. Twinleaf Town. Twinleaf Town has one of the most peaceful themes in the 4th generation. Nonetheless, within its waters lies a cursed item that probably not too many know it was there, and that is the Odd Keystone, an item from which voices can be heard occasionally according to its in-game description. How is it that such a cursed item connected to Spiritomb ended up in such an unexpected place? In Pokémon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, there's a paper with an official statement of apology written by Raizo Cosmo, Professor Cosmo's father, stating that he had lost an Odd Keystone that the Ouroboros mine had donated to the Sea Mobile. Is it possible that Professor Cosmo's father visited the Sinnoh region in the past and lost the Odd Keystone in the southern lake of Twinleaf Town? Southern Island. The Southern Island is a very special location as it's the first event location in any Pokémon game. This small place is home to Latias or Latios, depending on which one you chose in Pokémon Ruby and Sapphire. Although the place itself is mysterious given its difficulty to access, what's always intrigued me are the two messages that can be found on the place. The first one, at the entrance of the forest, reads, "Those whose memories fade seek to carve them in their hearts." After you find Latios or Latias, there's an object in the center of the forest that reads, "All dreams are but another reality. Never forget." They remind me of the signpost present in Faraway Island that Mr. Fuji made for anyone who set foot on the place. But who could have been the person or entity behind these two messages on Southern Island? Lavender Town. The noble purple town has always given us a sense of hopelessness, a place stained with the blood of deceased Pokémon such as Cubon's mother, who fell at the hands of Team Rocket. A tower dominates the landscape and houses not only the graves of Pokémon, but also ghosts that are looking for rest in the best of cases, but also looking for revenge. The channelers present in the Pokémon Tower are a reflection of this idea that can be heard through their words asking for souls and blood. As if this weren't enough, the kindest of men, Mr. Fuji, hides an obscure past whose traces are scattered all around Kanto, and even lands far away that hide the secrets of myth. There are legends told by people outside of the Pokémon universe hiding under the veil of this already mysterious and cursed place, such as Buried Alive or White Hand, the same that was spotted on your shoulder by the little girl at the foot of the Pokémon Tower. But one of the most powerful elements of this location is its music, a theme that contrasts with everything else heard in the Kanto region, and that highlights the uneasy sensation and coldness of the town. Stories have spread about Japanese children listening to the theme that supposedly contains high-pitched sounds only perceived by them, and that have driven their malleable minds to take their own lives. While Buried Alive, White Hand, or the incident with Japanese children are made-up stories, the rest of the tales that lie in Lavender Town are true within the Pokémon universe, and that is what makes it one of the creepiest yet most charming places. Pokémon Mansion. The Pokémon Mansion on Cinnabar Island is connected to the creation of Mewtwo, as we can see cloning tanks in Pokémon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee. Although it's never mentioned who worked in this mansion, it is thought that both Blaine and Mr. Fuji, who were friends and also scientists, worked in this place with the purpose of creating Mewtwo. There are several journal entries that tell the story of how they discovered a Pokemon in South America they named Mew, and that from it they got DNA to create Mewtwo, but that due to its power it was impossible to control. It's possible that due to the state in which the mansion is, at least before being completely obliterated by the volcano on the island in Gen 2, is due to Mewtwo destroying the place while trying to break free from the cloning tank. There's also another interesting observation about this place, and that is that besides Mewtwo's tank, there are other 4 that might reference characters present in the uncut story of Mewtwo's origin, those being the 3 Kanto's daughters, but also a human character by the name of Amber, Dr. Fuji's daughter, at least the Fuji from the first movie. Amber has a tragic story as she passed away during an accident, and Fuji was so obsessed with bringing Amber back to life that he somehow preserved her soul in a container. His wife left him because she couldn't stand what he was doing. After some time, he was able to create Amber 2, a clone of her daughter that along with the starter Pokemon, communicated with Mewtwo through their minds. Unfortunately, the clones weren't strong enough to survive the cloning process, being Mewtwo the only survivor. This makes me wonder if Amber is actually a character that existed in the universe of the core series games, or if the presence of the 4 tanks in the Pokemon Mansion besides Mewtwo's are completely unrelated to this theory. Altering Cave. In Fire Red, Leaf Green and Emerald, we can find the Altering Cave, a cave that contained Zubat, nothing more, nothing less. But initially its purpose was the opposite of what it ended up being, as through mystery gift events, the player would be able to find different Pokemon from Johto that aren't present in Hoenn, such as Shuckle, Pineco and Teddiursa, Pokemon that would eventually be catchable in the extended area of the Safari Zone in Pokemon Emerald. Faraway Island. This faraway place, as its name implies, plays an important role on the story of the first generation games, even though the only game where it could be accessed from was Pokemon Emerald through a rare item that was distributed in Japan in 2005 for a very limited time. This island would have to be Guyana in South America, at least if we acknowledge the diaries from the Pokemon Mansion in Pokemon Red, Blue and Yellow. If we follow a specific path on Faraway Island, we'll find a signpost with an inscription that reads the following: September, October, November or December 6th day. If any human sets foot here, let it be a kind-hearted person. With that hope, I depart. In the Japanese version, we can see a signature that ends with G, which is speculated to be Mr. Fuji. It's quite possible that Mr. Fuji was the person in charge of obtaining Mew's DNA in order to work in Mewtwo's creation together with Blaine at the Pokemon Mansion. In fact, it's speculated that Mr. Fuji was the author of the Pokemon Mansion journals, and the fact that he worked in that place is supported by Blaine, stating that the place still holds the remnants of his old friend's research. Both were very good friends, as there's a picture of the two at the Cinnabar lab. Without Mr. Fuji setting foot on Faraway Island or Guyana, it's possible that Mewtwo wouldn't exist at all, and even Mew would have remained undiscovered for a long time besides myths. Giant Chasm. The Tunguska event is believed to have been a huge explosion caused by a meteorite that fell in Russia and that completely flattened an estimated 80 million trees in the area. The Giant Chasm is based on this place in event, and what's interesting about this location is that it is home to many Pokemon that are considered to be extraterrestrials, such as Lunaton and Clefairy. It is said that Kyurem, the legendary ice dragon, arrived on Earth with the meteorite that caused the chasm. As I mentioned in my Pokemon Black and White Iceberg, there's a contradiction about the origin of this dragon. Some say that he arrived from outer space, making it an extraterrestrial Pokemon, while the legend about the Tao Trio states that it was one of 3 parts of an original dragon. Nobody knows for sure what's the reality behind this terrifying dragon. Lost Cave. For those who played Fire Red and Leaf Green, you might be familiar with the Lost Cave located north of Five Island. There's a mysterious power acting upon it that makes people get lost when they navigate through it. It reminds us of the Lost Woods, as going through a specific tunnel will lead us to the entrance if we don't follow a specific pattern. Ghost Pokemon can be found here, so probably the effects in this cave are caused by them, but nobody can tell for sure. Pattern Bush. This area, exclusive to Fire Red and Leaf Green north of Six Island, is known for having very peculiar patterns where no grass grows. Only bug-type Pokémon appear here, and many years ago I heard that the area actually resembled a Game Boy Advance cartridge from the inside, and that the appearance of bugs in the place was a reference to all the bugs that were present in Generation 1, but I can't get to find that theory anywhere. Kalos Power Plant. Although the Kalos Power Plant is a place that everyone who completed Pokémon X and Y knows, there's actually a huge section of it that can be seen, but it's impossible to access by the player. If we use tools to go out of bounds, we'll see that there are areas with lava that have made players theorize that this place was intended for Volcanion to be obtained via an event that never saw the light of day, possibly because of how rushed Pokémon X and Y were back in the day. Seal Chamber. The Seal Chamber is a place that not even many people in Pacific Log know about. What's interesting about this place are the Braille inscriptions that describe how people actually lived in that hidden cave alongside a very powerful Pokémon that they ended up sealing away for fear of its power. In the Japanese version of the games, there's no reference to singular or plural when referring to the Pokémon they sealed. However, in the English translation, they refer to a single Pokémon. This is considered to be Regigigas, the master of the Regis from Generation 3 and 8 that didn't appear until the release of Pokémon Diamond and Pearl. It's unknown what kind of technique or power this ancient civilization used to seal Regigigas or the Regis away, and what exactly they feared about the Pokémon. Old Chateau. Home to the first human ghosts in the Pokémon franchise, the Old Chateau is an old manor house near the exit of Eterna Forest. There are two spirits that wander the place, the spirit of a butler and that of a young girl that can be randomly seen moving without any walking animation, as if they were hovering. In Pokémon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, there's a painting of somebody who resembles Beethoven. You can hear it laughing as you turn your back, and also his eyes will illuminate with red light. In the anime, it is said that the old chateau was abandoned due to problems with electricity after a thunderstorm, and that it was used by Rotom to live there. Mirage Island. A Phantom Island is defined as any island that has appeared on maps or in explorers' accounts, but that doesn't exist in the real world. These islands were often reported based on erroneous observations, myths, or navigational errors, and they persisted on maps for centuries until their non-existence was confirmed through exploration or improved mapping techniques, such as Sandy Island, that was believed to exist in the Coral Sea, but was found to be non-existent in 2012 by a team of researchers. This served as inspiration for Mirage Island, a phantom island on Route 130 in the Hoenn region that has a chance of 1 in around 65,000 to appear, and that due to this, not too many of us got the chance to see it. Only Wynaut and a single lychee berry can be found on this island. Distortion World. This is one of the places where the player leaves Earth and enters into a realm created basically at the beginning of time by Arceus, a place destined to hold the renegade Pokémon Giratina, exiled to this dark world for its violent behavior. The way in which things work there makes no sense from the Pokémon world perspective, as gravity can work in different directions, and it's basically a wasteland with no purpose but for Giratina to be contained. Considering the way this place is, one of the most terrifying thoughts is the fact that when Cyrus is defeated in this world, he's never seen living it. This is supported by an episode of the anime Pokémon Generations, in which Giratina pulls Cyrus into the distortion world, never to be seen again. The Foreign Culture Building. If you were curious about how a church would look like in Pokémon, all you have to do is to go to Hearthome City. This cathedral has an NPC that talks about his father and his son, which could be a reference to the Holy Trinity in Christian religion. SSN. One of the most luxurious ships in the Pokémon world is the SSN, a ship that once held a battle between Red and Blue at the beginning of their adventures, a ship that departed from Vermilion City to a place unknown, but that to this day, 28 years later, we know nothing about. If you've seen the anime, it's possible that your mind makes you think that it shared the same fate in the core series games, but the reality is that nothing is known about it beyond the events of Red, Blue and Yellow. There were rumors about the player being able to access a city if they waited for the SSN to come back after a year, but no information about its destiny has been revealed so far. Abandoned ship. There exist mysterious places whose story has been recorded, but there's one that basically nobody knows about, and yet it lies there, within reach of curious visitors, the SS Cactus or the abandoned ship. As far as I know, there's only one character in the entire game that tells us something quite interesting about the ship, and that is that it reminds him of the SSN that departed from Vermilion City in the Kanto region more or less at the same time as the events of Ruby, Sapphire and Emerald. This has fed theories about the SS Cactus being the SSN. The thing with this is that, while in the anime the SSN sunk into the depths of the ocean, there's nothing that tells us that anything bad happened to it in the games. Is it possible that the abandoned ship we see in the third generation of Pokémon games is the same one that Red and Blue once boarded at the beginning of their legendary adventures? Whirl Islands. Two countries were fighting over the island. One day, Lugia emerged and cast lightning bolts to tear the island into 4 parts. After this, the Pokémon disappeared into the depths. This is the story of the Whirl Islands located in Johto and home to Lugia, a Pokémon that is said to live at the bottom of the sea because its power is huge. If you played Pokémon Gold, the game never really told you where to go or how to find this legendary Pokémon. This was that magical era in which such a small game could bring so much mystery, and data mining wasn't a thing. If exploring a cave isn't enough, doing so under the ocean is quite creepy if you think about it. The labyrinth-like layout of the island's caves and the many paths you can take give us a sense of disorientation that adds to the mystery that lies in this dark underwater place. It was such a good time when the game didn't hold your hand in order to encounter a legendary that you needed to catch in order to progress in the story, and instead you were on your own to catch a Pokémon like Lugia that wasn't even referenced in Pokémon Gold at all, save for the old man in Pewter City that gives you the silver wing. Chamber of Emptiness. This cave in Kalos, as its name says, it's empty. Almost. There are 2 items that can be found, a Spooky Plate and a Banetite, 2 items that are strongly connected to ghost Pokemon. However, not even this type of creatures can be found in this void place. I don't understand the existence of a place like this in the game or any game, as for example, even Altering Cave was supposed to serve a purpose with a mystery gift event, but no such data exists about the Chamber of Emptiness. Scorched Slab. It's possible that you don't remember this place even if you played Pokémon Ruby, Sapphire or Emerald, as it's a completely unremarkable place with a TM inside. Well, this cave on Route 120 is supposed to be modeled after Amano Iwato, the cave where the sun goddess Amaterasu hid for a long time in Japanese mythology. I don't have any other reliable source other than Bulbapedia saying this information, but the only reference to the sun goddess we can find is the TM for Sunny Day. White Rock. Although not a place by definition, the white rock that lies on Mos Dip City was theorized to hold the secret to the mythical Pokémon Jirachi, as an NPC tells us that people at the Mos Dip Space Center use it to wish for their rockets to fly safely, and that instead, she uses wish tags to make their wishes come true. This made people believe that the white rock could have been linked to an event to find Jirachi. I sometimes wonder if this white rock is connected to the one found on Route 224, and that is related to the event where the player is able to catch Shaman in Generation 4. Mystery Zone. The Mystery Zone is a very interesting place because it's generally an area that is out of bounds and in the void. This place is interesting because it's been a popular way to gain access to places that otherwise are impossible to get to. If you access this area, you could be lost forever, as there's no visual cue that can tell you where you are. You can surf on the door of Aaron's room if you happen to have a Japanese copy of Diamond or Pearl. With the use of the step counter, if you follow specific paths, you'll be able to visit locations such as the Flower Paradise or New Moon Island, places where you can catch Shamin or Darkrai respectively. Bill's Secret Garden. We know it's not a real place, but back then when the internet wasn't widely available, it was a playground rumor many of us believed. According to it, Bill's secret garden lied in the space that was barely visible behind his house, and that was believed to contain extremely rare Pokemon such as new evolutions, Mew, and also Pokegods such as Nidogot. I don't remember the alleged methods to access this place, but it was probably something like finishing the Pokemon League without saving 50 times, and having all Pokemon at level 100, something ridiculous that nobody was able to do back then. Naval Rock. Not many of us were lucky enough to visit this place on the Sevi Islands, and the reason is because the player needs an event item in order to reach Naval Rock. This is the place where Lugia and Ho-Oh roost. Canon-wise, it's unknown if these two Pokemon are the same that Ethan and Chris are supposed to find 3 years later in Johto, or if there are actually several of these Pokemon. Something interesting is that while in Fire Red and Leaf Green the cave is silver, it will be gold in Pokemon Emerald, a clear reference to Pokemon Gold and Silver. Glitch City. Lose yourself in a forgotten cave, a unique shopping experience, water walking, city surfing, a true natural wonder. This is part of the amazing activities that you can do in Glitch City, a place that is accessible through a series of steps in Gen 1 that will transport you into a glitched dimension. There's no lore about this place, as it's just a result of the game not processing information as intended. A weird and unbelievable place. In the Pokemon world, people go missing, such as children taken away by Drifloon or Hypno, but sometimes people disappear without any further explanation. In a letter found in a bottle on Kalae Bay, a boy wrote a message to his sister, who is now an old lady, about how he ended up in a weird and unbelievable place with nice people. Since this happened in Pokemon Sun and Moon, it's possible that the boy in question ended up pulled into an Ultra wormhole. So far, the only people that we see on the other side belong to the Ultra Recon squad, so it might be that the author of the letter ended up in the Ultra Megalopolis, but considering there can be other worlds, nobody will ever know where this boy ended up in. Sevi Islands unused locations. I'm not talking about Naval Rock or Birth Island that were accessible through events. I'm talking about places that were planned to be included in the game but were deleted in the end. The places in question are Sevi Island 8, 9, 22, 23 and 24 and early versions of 6 and 7 Island. While there are images of Sevi Isle 8 and 9, the rest of the islands don't have any maps assigned to them, but it makes me wonder what the original purpose of these places was. Ultra Worlds. If you've played Pokemon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, it's possible that you ended up hundreds or even thousands of light years away from Earth through a warp hole and into a distant world. In them, you were able to find a Pokemon from Earth, but have you ever wondered why? If you know the story of the 7th generation of games, you know that Mon, Lusamin's husband, conducted experiments that led the Ether Foundation to find these faraway worlds or dimensions. It's possible that when carrying out these experiments, they accidentally, or in the worst case intentionally, made Pokemon cross these portals but couldn't go back, ending up in these isolated and faraway corners of the galaxy, waiting for nothing else but to die in solitude. It's not until the player is able to end up in these distant places that they are able to catch and save these Pokemon. If we analyze the landscapes, they look completely devoid of any life other than the Pokemon that inhabits in it. But this could be just a small section of the actual planet in which you arrive. I wonder if we'll ever get to see expanded version of these worlds or dimensions, or they're gonna remain trapped in Ultra Sun and Moon forever. Blocked doors. As a child, it was annoying that when I found these blocked doors in Zootopolis City, no matter what I did or how many fake methods I followed to unlock them, it was impossible to access them. Even with cheat codes, I remember nothing happened when I stepped on the doors, and I had to wait until somebody explained that these doors led to a room where several trainers could be fought via cards that could be scanned through an obscure Game Boy Advance peripheral known as the e-reader. Scary House. The Scary House is a small residence with a lone man situated in the northern section of Route 14 in Kalos. When the player first arrives at the house with Shauna, Tierno and Trevor, the man will retell a haunted story. It was a dark and stormy night many years ago. Lost, I arrived at this house and went inside. The lights wouldn't turn on, so I fearfully looked around the house. Eventually, I made my way into the kitchen. There was no sign of anyone being there. I found the fridge, and when I opened it, a faint light leaked out. I could finally make out my surroundings, and I saw the faint outline of a man huddling in the corner of the room. I tried to tell him that I was lost and I was hoping he'd let me stay until morning, but when I approached him, the man suddenly screamed, "Stay back!" I apologized and continued to plead my case. "Please, can't you help me?" "I'm not talking to you," he shouted. I looked at the man in surprise. When I did this, the man asked me, "Can't you see them? Behind you, a horde of faceless men." There's no more information on this point. Strange House. The story behind the Strange House is probably the darkest and saddest one in the Pokémon universe, rivaling the story of Amber in the uncut story of Mewtwo's origins, as both deal with the early deaths of two girls. The Strange House is located at the base of Reversal Mountain and is constantly haunted by the ghost of a young girl that can also be found on Marvelous Bridge. When found, the girl will say the following: "An everlasting dark dream, an endless dream of darkness. Dad, Mom, Abra, where are you?" In the dark dream, I heard my dad's voice. "Forget about the lunar wing. Please stay here with me." Taking this into account, it is possible that the girl's passing away was due to an encounter with Darkrai, a Pokémon that induced her with an endless nightmare. The presence of books in the house talking about Pokémon related to dreams and nightmares such as Drowsy, Hypno, Darkrai and Cresselia hint at the possibility that the parents were doing research on something that could lead them to wake up their daughter. The fact that the lunar wing was present in the house is a sign that the parents did find the legendary object, but unfortunately, by the time this happened, their daughter passed away from an endless nightmare induced by Darkrai. As I mentioned in my Pokémon Black and White Iceberg, this implies that contrary to Darkrai's Pokédex entry stating that it means no harm, it indeed can be a deadly Pokémon. As in the girl's dream, Darkrai impersonates her dad, telling her to forget about the lunar wing, an item that would have ended the nightmare she could never wake up from. Lost House. Do you remember the pharmacy in Ecruteak City? Probably not, because it doesn't exist, and yet there's an NPC in Gold and Silver that mentions this place. However, it's impossible to talk to this NPC because in order to do so, you would need to step out of bounds, more precisely on a warp point hidden northwest of the city. This will make you fall into a house where you will find a girl that will tell you about a pharmacy in Ecruteak. I guess at some point, Ecruteak was supposed to have the pharmacy that is now in Cyanwood. House for sale. Nobody lives here. In Pokémon Gold, Silver and Crystal, there's a house in Kanto where the daycare man once lived that if you press A in front of its door, it will display the message, "House for sale. Nobody lives here." The funny part is that there are actually people living inside, and this message displays only if you stand in front of the door and press A, something that players rarely do when it comes to buildings they can access by just pressing forward on the D-pad. Nobody knows what Game Freak intended with this message. Lost City. Some of you might know every single Kanto city and town, but there are traces of a lost city that never came to be. In an early concept of Kanto's map, there's a city west of Vermilion that is nowhere to be found in the games. It's interesting to see how the city or location is on the way that the SSN would have followed, so it's possible that at the beginning, this ship could actually take us to another location in the game that we never got to know. If you saw my Pokémon Red, Blue and Yellow Iceberg, you might remember I mentioned Neon City, a rumored place that you could go to once the SSN went back to Vermilion City after beating the Elite Four 50 times in a row, and that could have been inspired by Neon Town from the anime. Supposedly, this place was bigger than Celadon City, where you could get many rare items and exotic Pokémon. This could also be connected to an empty slot with a location north of Indigo Plateau in Pokémon Red and Blue that you can fly to, but if you do so, the game will freeze. Lost Towers. The places in this entry are very mysterious because they are mentioned only once in the entire franchise, but only in the game's internal files, and they might refer to places that were planned to exist during Generation 3 or are still planned to appear in future games. The places in question are Darkness, Black Iron, Red, and Final Tower. The only way in which we know about these places is because there are ribbons that were intended to be given to the player once they conquered these towers. If the Battle Tower is already a challenging test, when I hear Darkness or Final Tower, it sounds so definitive, as if the Pokémon to be encountered there were legendary or mythical with special moves or something similar. But it's likely that Game Freak has already forgotten what places these ribbons made reference to. Sinjo Ruins. If you want to see one of the most mind-blowing cutscenes in any Pokémon game ever, you'll need to take your event Arceus to the Ruins of Alph, where an event will trigger, and you'll be taken to the Sinjo Ruins, a place where two cultures converge. The cutscene in question happens when Arceus begins to create one of the three Pokémon of Myth in a spectacular manner. This is the only way in which you can have one of these three legendary Pokémon at level 1. The future. What's the difference between Pokémon and past Paradox Pokémon? There are several, such as the way they look, their behavior, and the fact that they belong to different periods in time. But they share a common element, and that is that they are organic creatures. But what happens when we talk about future Paradox Pokémon? If we take a look at all of them, there's no sign, at least from the exterior, that they're organic creatures given their robotic appearance, and even parts such as their eyes resemble LEDs. What could have happened in order for organic creatures to be partially or fully robotic? This is what makes me think of the future in the Pokémon world. We know nothing about what this place looks like, but considering what future Paradox Pokémon are, it's possible that the world has become polluted or even destroyed in the distant future, to an extent that no fully organic creatures are able to survive on it, being forced to get artificial parts for their survival, or in a more extreme case, being just replicas of creatures that went extinct. As I mentioned in my Scarlet and Violet Iceberg, it is possible that the future humanity created an artificial intelligence that deemed biological species such as humans and Pokémon a threat to their existence, and decided to create artificial Pokémon of their own to destroy them, and these very weapons are what we consider future Paradox Pokémon. The distant future in the Pokémon world, or an alternative future of it, could actually be one of the scariest locations in the Pokémon Multiverse. Silent Hill. In a parallel world, you might remember how your adventure began in Silent Hill with Kurusu. If you're not sure what I'm talking about, it's because you might not know about the Space World 97 demo of Pokémon Gold that was leaked a couple of years ago. Silent Hill was supposed to be the hometown of the main character, a name that of course reminds us of the survival horror classic for the PS1. Although there's not much to say about this place, I wanted to use this entry to talk about the Space World 97 demo and the way it looks, the colors, and the fact that it almost feels like it came from another reality where Pokémon took a different path. Probably it's only me, but there's this weird feeling I get of something that never came to be. It actually reminds me of the most mysterious song, which was the first Iceberg I posted on this channel, that aura of something that cannot belong to our world. Space World 97 Ruins of Alph. The Ruins of Alph are one of the most mysterious places in the whole Pokémon world. They're home to the unknown, hieroglyphs that resemble letters, but that also have a very close connection to the creator Pokémon Arceus. There are people that think that the unknown are in fact the 1000 arms it used to shape the world according to its Pokédex entry. And this makes sense, as in the Pokémon Adventures manga, the unknown are seen helping in the creation of the Pokémon of Myth, Dialga, Palkia, and Giratina. The radio waves heard inside the ruins that are a combination of Ho's cry and the Asher flute are apparently trying to tell something to the player, but what that is might remain a mystery forever. Besides the ruins of Alph we all are familiar with, there are others that could have been but weren't, and I'm referring to those from the Space World 97 demo of Pokémon Gold. If you look at the layout, this theory that circulated on Reddit might make sense to you. According to some, these very ruins of Alph are a clear representation of the bombing of Nagasaki and more specifically Hiroshima. If you pay attention to the center, there's a structure that resembles the atomic bomb dome, a structure that survived the atomic blast. The location might make sense for some, as in the same way as in Hiroshima, there's sea to the south, and the same happens in the ruins of Alph. On top of that, there's also a bridge that references the Aoi Bridge, a spot that was taken as a reference to release the atomic bomb on August 6, 1945. But what about the unknown? According to some, they represent the shadows left by people that were vaporized in the explosion, and the fact that there are letters of the Latin alphabet represents the imposition and domination of the United States, who destroyed a part of Japan. Do you believe in this theory? C-Mobile. C-Mobile holds one of the darkest secrets in the Hoenn region, and this is the reason why the project was abandoned. But before that, let's see who's behind it. Greater Mobile Holdings was a very important company in the past, and it was responsible for the creation of Mobile City, its only successful project. However, besides this, the company aimed at more ambitious projects such as New Mobile, an underground city that according to Watson had to be suspended because of something going on. To find out what was going on and who was responsible for it, let's talk about C-Mobile and the information that can be found there. This facility research was the third and final project of Greater Mobile Holdings that had the purpose of extracting natural resources from the ocean, but that, as you can see by its state, it's abandoned and in ruins. What happened there? There are several documents in the place that reveal many secrets of the past of Hoenn, but there's one that probably ended the company. Here's the document. Devon's Secret Investigation Report. The development on new energy turned out to be true. The energy that uses Pokemon's bioenergy is called Infinity Energy. Investigation Report on Watson. A series of actions related to cancellation of the New Mobile project turned out to be true. I recommend prompt disciplinary action against him as a traitor to our group. Watson, the gym leader of Mobile City, was also working for Greater Mobile Holdings. However, after realizing that the place started serving as a habitat for wild Pokemon, he secretly stepped in and became a whistleblower that forced the company to stop the creation of the city, that in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire is stated to have 69 floors underground, even though the player is only able to access the first one. Due to the company losing a lot of money on New Mobile, they decided to create a research facility on Route 108 to start harvesting energy from the ocean. However, as the document states, Greater Mobile Holdings was secretly investigating the Devon Corporation, one of the most successful companies in the Hoenn region, but more specifically, the energy that they were using to power many of its vehicles, such as their submarines or the rockets launched from the Mos Deep Space Center. And how would this company match the power that Devon had, using the same energy as the rivals, the Infinity Energy? If you are familiar with Pokemon X and Y, you might also know about the Ultimate Weapon, a device that originally served the purpose of reviving AC's Floette, but that in exchange had to use the life energy of Pokemon that were sacrificed and whose graves lie on Route 10 in Kalos. Nonetheless, the Devon Corporation somehow privatized this energy and were the only ones in the market that could use it. With this situation, it is understood that Greater Mobile Holdings, through C-Mobile, was intending to extract this energy from Pokemon, disguising it as retrieving resources from the ocean. But once aware of it, Watson couldn't turn a blind eye in the same way that he couldn't let the company continue with the development of New Mobile, and therefore, once the media knew about it, C-Mobile had to close, and the people behind Greater Mobile Holdings disappeared into thin air. In a turn of events, it's interesting to see how a company that was obsessed with energy at the cost of the lives of Pokemon ended up unintentionally creating two places that became habitats for wild Pokemon. I would like to introduce you to my new YouTube channel called The Eisenberg Experience. This channel is dedicated to all types of icebergs that aren't Pokemon related. You'll find mystery, movies, video games, philosophy, and a lot of interesting content. So if you like my videos and you're interested in these topics, please consider subscribing. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next one.